This week on Inevitable,
we rob a sperm bank.
we elongate a piano.
And our jobs force us to go against our religion.
Hello, I'm Dylan.
And I'm Keon.
And this is Inevitable, that podcast where the most convoluted possible explanation for who the killer is turns out to be the right one, because this week we watched A Double Life.
Written by John Collee.
Directed by Christopher Baker.
And it aired on August 17th, 1987.
Very, very good episode this week, in my opinion.
Yeah, this is... I know I keep saying this, like, pretty much every week, but this is the best episode of Star Cops
I
so
think
far.
this is my second favorite.
What, next to 2?
Yes.
Episode 2?
Why do you say that with so much disdain?
Episode 2 wasn't all it was cracked up to be.
Yes, it was. You never liked episode 2 from the start. I opened your eyes to the genius that was lying below that you didn't even see.
Yeah, the genius of the rollerblader. Yeah. Not gonna let them live that one down.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to let them live down a couple of things in this episode. You know that disappearing Mondrian that I swear was in Alex's office for that one episode and still seems to be missing.
Well, before we get into the plot on this one, I was reading a sort of 30th anniversary article about Star Cops. I forget what site it was from, but it was obviously written 2 years ago, 2017, the 30th anniversary. And they were, talking about the Star Cops time slot. And they revealed, I didn't know this before reading the article, but the reason why that was such a bad time slot for the BBC was that most other major channels were in the middle of programs at the time. So the BBC had like a weird start for this time slot, which is when Star Cops started. So in order to watch Star Cops, if you were watching something else, you would have to interrupt what you were watching to switch to the BBC.
Wow.
Yep.
Well, that sucks.
Yeah, now that I know that explanation sort of in depth, I can see why that was such a terrible time slot, and I can see why Star Cops maybe only got one season, or why that was such a big contributor. Because we knew that the time slot was bad because people had said it, or various sources online had said that, but I never knew why.
Yeah. Well, surprise, surprise. It's bad because it's bad.
Which is a shame, because the more episodes I watch of this show, the more I actually really like it. And I'm not even.
It does grow on you.
No, yeah, I think
like
it's
a parasite,
like a fungus slowly taking over your body. No, I mean, and I think the reason why I like this episode and the reason why the show is growing on me are one and the same. I think it's because of the cast of characters. And last week we sort of were discussing, is Anna gonna put a damper on how good the dynamic is between the other four? I think the answer to that is no, having watched this.
No, but also I made an explicit note in my notes that besides Anna saving them at the end, her entire purpose up to that point was to get knocked out. She didn't really do anything.
No, I mean, she had a full arc in this, basically, which was an arc also for Davis as well. I think this, I disagree on that, but we can touch on that.
No, I'm not sold on the Anna Shoun character yet.
Davis is actually back to, in my opinion, he's more similar to how he was in episode 2.
Davis is all over the place.
Yeah. Anyway, let's just jump right into it. So we start off with a guy playing a piano, grand piano in a concert hall.
Yeah, intercut with these scenes of someone else stealing something.
Robbing a sperm bank.
Stealing something.
Yeah, we don't know what it is. And, if you had asked me, if you had made me pause the episode at this point and asked me what this was, I would have never guessed that it was an embryo bank or an egg bank.
I would have guessed it was a computer, data center.
Yeah, it actually looks like some sort of futuristic, server room.
But no. In fact, it took me 15 minutes to actually figure out that these were the embryos everyone was talking about. I was like, what? What?
Well, they actually say it right away because the Star Cops arrive on the scene 5 minutes after the crime is committed. They've really stepped up their
Literally
game.
nothing else is happening on Moonbase, like, at this point. Like, I think that's what you learn during this episode, is that literally nothing happens on Moonbase. I think Nathan even has a line where he's like, I've increased Star Cops' like close rate by like 100%, or something to that effect.
Yeah. Well, they show up there. Conveniently for them, this facility is on Moonbase. So Moonbase, we're learning, is such a weird like place. They have an embryo bank that's just open to the public to store their like unborn children or like unborn reproductive cells. And it's just in like an area that anyone can access. 'Cause, like, tell me if you can perceive this differently, but like it looked like it was just some corridors leading to like, I don't even know, like a hexagonal like just drop. I don't know, like what I don't know.
You're asking the wrong person, if I'm going to be honest.
But as it turns out, the embryos that this guy stole were the embryos of Chamsia Asadi, who is a powerful and wealthy.
Middle Eastern?
Yeah, we don't. It's ambiguous as to whether or not she's from an actual real world country or if it's just some weird sketch of like a Middle Eastern power. But
Yeah.
which in itself, that's like an entire conversation in itself. But, you know, first we had, I mean, this is just another one in the succession, you know. First we had the sketchy Americans, then we had the sketchy Italians, then we had the sketchy Japanese.
At least there's equal opportunity sketchiness. Nobody's safe.
Now we have the sketchy Saudi Arabians, question mark?
Yeah, they get called Arabs at some point by, I think, Nathan. But that doesn't really confirm or deny anything.
No.
We also see Nathan orders Moonbase sealed off, which I guess he has the power to do. But he apparently has to leave 2 doors open for like very important people. And he puts Anna Shoun on one of those doors. Anna Shoun, the devout Buddhist who, or Buddhist, depending on your pronunciation, who basically abhors violence and hasn't had as much Star Cops training as any of the other Star Cops to guard one of the doors, and she gets knocked out.
Right.
Not that I'm blaming Nathan for putting her there, because she was probably the closest Star Cop.
Just like one of 6.
But also, like, why did she not have more training?
Well, we actually see another Star Cop, I believe, during this sequence.
Yes, we do.
Named Watton.
He actually appears multiple times in this episode, and then at the end, Nathan's like, Divas, I want you to take Anna, and Divas is like, no, I'd rather go alone. And I'm like, but what about that other Star Cop? Why is he not an option? He's right there.
He's just like a part-time Star Cop. You know, maybe he was off duty.
Maybe he's like all the other Star Cops. They just get fired off screen. Like, maybe the Star Cop turnover rate, like we theorized, actually is like 100%.
Well, Anna gets knocked out, and if I remember correctly, just shoved in like a bathroom somewhere.
Yeah, but they find her pretty much immediately.
And she doesn't hear the end of this from Divas for the entire episode. Divas just like, first of all, goes off on her here.
Yeah, I felt a little bad for her, actually. I did feel a little bad for her. But also, it's Divas being Divas. He like, the first time he met Nathan, he went off on him for a whole episode. So,
right.
In some ways, it's like the Divas introduction. It's like, this is how your friendship with Divas starts.
Weirdly, Theroux sort of goes off on Divas for making fun of Anna.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if Theroux consistently does this. He did it to Kenzie in last week's episode. And I feel like, I don't know, Theroux makes a lot of wisecracks and jokes himself, so I don't know, it feels a little hypocritical.
It is a little hypocritical.
Yeah.
Well, so Anna generates a police sketch, and I wanted to stop for a moment to talk about this, because this is interesting, because I just learned about this week, that apparently actually like really detailed police sketches actually serve to detriment the investigation, because people who see the sketches will focus more on looking for someone who matches the sketch exactly, looking for something that matches every single element of the sketch, whereas a more general less detailed sketch actually tends to produce better results, and this is like a documented thing. I saw this because I saw it was a picture of a news person talking about a police sketch, and it was just like it looked almost like a stick figure face. And then the article was like when they caught the guy, he actually did look like the police sketch, and like looking at the pictures, like yeah, actually I can see that. Like yep. And the article talked about how there was an article that talked about how more detailed police sketches tend to lead to less arrests because people focus on the details rather than looking for someone who matches just generally.
Yeah, I mean that's why like emojis are so successful, right? It's because they're abstracted. Like you see the like or like the classic emoticons as well. Like you see the two dots and the smile, and like that could be anyone's face. But the more like detail you add to that, then it can't be anyone's face, at some point.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I can totally see why that would be the case, that those actually hurt investigations. But weirdly enough, and they use this program multiple times in the episode, they're going through like a digital like selection of different features. And
right.
Kind of reminded me of that game Guess Who. I don't know if you ever played that, but
yes.
It's a sort of a matching game almost.
Yes.
With a bunch of different faces. Which honestly made it just seem like the rest of the Star Cops were doing work and Anna was just sitting there playing Guess Who. Like online Guess Who champion, Anna Shoun.
Well, so Chamsia is like upset. She wants to know who did it. So Nathan and David are investigating like everybody who had a beef with her late husband. Turns out her late husband was an arms dealer. And I was like, okay, of course he was. Of course.
Yeah,
of course.
The longer the episode goes on, the more we realize that like Chamsia has a bone to pick with like a lot of people, or other way around, actually, a lot of people have a bone to pick with her for some pretty, I guess, understandable reasons. I guess.
Well, Anna's like freaking out because the sketch she keeps making keeps looking like famous pianist James Bannerman.
Right.
And Nathan's like, well, maybe it is James Bannerman then.
So they sent Theroux down to Earth, and Theroux visits Bannerman at his Alice in Wonderland themed house.
That looks a lot just like Nathan's apartment from a different angle.
Yeah, it really does. It really does seem like they redecorated the set that they used for Nathan's apartment, and I wouldn't be surprised if that's actually what they did.
Mm-hmm.
But it's got all this, like, I don't know, pink, like old-timey looking wallpaper and like weird shaped windows and doors. I don't know. It just looks like something out of the like Disney Alice in Wonderland movie to me.
Maybe it is.
No wonder Bannerman went crazy and robbed the embryos. Anyone would go crazy in like an Alice in Wonderland world. No.
Well, David's got a little DNA sequencer. And he's going to take James Bannerman's DNA and compare it to some sliver that they got at the crime scene. And it's a match. But up on Moonbase, Nathan doesn't think this is right. Yeah,
Kravchenko is really pressuring Nathan into just accepting the facts of the case as they appear so far, because Chamsia has enough power to like shut down, I forget what it was. She has enough power to like essentially just destroy everything Kravchenko has spent his time building up.
Kravchenko has the funniest line of the whole episode here, because Nathan proposes this theory where he's like, oh yeah, like his dad was a geneticist, and Alex just immediately fires back, my dad was a geneticist and I don't go around kidnapping people. And I was like, okay, wow. But yeah, he gives Nathan 24 hours. He basically tells Nathan he can stall for 24 hours, but after that, they've got to hand the name over to Chamsia.
Right. And actually, throughout all of this, we've been seeing sort of videos sent to Chamsia of the embryo napper, like melting.
Yeah, they're like ransom
embryos.
notes.
Yeah, pretty much. And every video, he destroys more and more of the eggs.
Mm-hmm. There's a line at the beginning of this episode that made me think this was going to go for a pro-life versus pro-choice thing, where when the embryos were stolen, I don't remember who says it, but someone goes, do you consider embryos kids? And someone goes, of course, but our job is just to find them. It doesn't matter what we think. And that just shut that down immediately.
Yeah, they don't really go down that route, surprisingly.
Thankfully, I think the whole like clone thing is a lot already.
Yeah. I mean, even that is like uh, within that there's like this nature versus nurture thing of like, all right, who's is he not the guy's son because he's a clone, or like is he was raised by the father and the real, the quote unquote natural born son wasn't type thing.
Right.
But I mean, yeah, they don't. The thrust of this episode is like, I mean, whether you go at it from like a pro life or pro choice perspective, the thrust of it is that Chomsky doesn't want her eggs destroyed.
Yeah. But yeah, Nathan tells Alex that if they give the name to Chomsky, they'll like kill him, basically.
Yeah. So the sort of detailed, I guess, backstory for what was his name, Bannerman.
James Bannerman.
Bannerman. Yeah, the sort of detailed backstory for his dad, Cyrus, was that he was this geneticist guy, and he got involved with like the underworld in some way, I believe. Mm-hmm. And made
As everybody does in this show.
or no, what it was that he got a lot of grants from various foundations, one of which was Chomsky's foundation, and he just like ran off with the grants and never like used them for scientific purposes or whatever.
Classic.
Which is why they had him killed. We find out, or it's implied actually, but pretty much outright stated that the Chomsky Association or whatever had this guy killed. Which is an even bigger nail in the coffin for Bannerman because now it looks like he wants revenge.
Revenge is a dish best served melted in acid, I guess.
Alongside poison. But so, Theroux puts Bannerman under house arrest, and he's like, so you thought you could get away with revenge, huh? And according to Bannerman, he doesn't even know who Chomsky Assadi is, and he's never met his dad. Mm-hmm. And
his dad, like, ran off or something.
Yeah, ran off before he was even born.
Killed himself, I think. Cyrus did kill himself at some point. I
thought the Assadi corporation or whatever had him killed, or maybe they forced him into suicide or something. I don't know.
Albie definitely thought he killed himself.
Huh.
Because I remember clearly, well, maybe it was Nathan, one of them said, like, Cyrus killed himself. Like, probably from guilt or something. But I think it's left open-ended.
Huh. But yeah, we find out actually that Bannerman's mother was an opera singer. And they're listening to her song up on Moonbase.
Nathan is anyway, I guess, for thinking music.
And this is when they go along with Nathan's like clone theory, which like put yourself in like Anna or Kenzie or Davis's shoes here, like, and your commanding officer comes in, he's like, all right, so like this case isn't as cut and dry as we think. There's actually a clone out there who committed the crime.
Nathan hasn't been wrong yet, even with his most outlandish theories. So I'd probably be like, all right, Nathan, you know what? That's pretty wild. But you know what, Nathan? I'm going to give it a shot, just for you.
Yeah, there's also the thing of like they have like 20 hours left, so
well, Kenzie's like
whatever.
Kenzie goes off on Nathan for like never giving her a job to do, or like never trusting her. And I'm like, well, one, you did take bribes, and two, you did like lie to the press to get your job back. So do you really blame Nathan in this situation? I don't.
Well, this is like, I mean, yeah, I don't. If you're asking like on a personal level, and this isn't every episode. Is like Kenzie's doing nothing, and then Nathan tells her to do something. She's like, come on, like. I don't want to do anything.
Kenzie does step up here, and Nathan's like, all right, well, I'm going to find the clone then. And Kenzie's like, no, you go to sleep. I'm going to find the clone.
Yeah, you just got to reverse psychology your employees into working.
That sounds like gaslighting.
But they find someone who looks exactly like Bannerman. And, they trace it back. His education was paid for by Cyrus. So they pretty much pinpoint the clone right away.
Classic. Yeah, because Kenzie finds that he paid for a private school. Then they look through the class photographs and find Albie pretty much instantly.
Right. That was his first and last mistake, paying for private school.
Meanwhile, what's her name?
Assadi?
Chomsky has captured James.
Yeah, so Theroux is still watching over
James.
Bannerman. And then there's like a knock at the door, and they're like, I wonder who that could be. And they open it up, and these guys in like gas masks bust in and like throw smoke grenades everywhere and just like drag James out.
And leave David completely unharmed, which is like the worst thing they could have done, because he basically just goes to Moonbase, is like, yep, James was kidnapped, probably by Chamsia.
So Nathan and Kenzie go down to Chamsia's like mansion or whatever, and Kenzie is just wearing the most like 50s greaser looking outfit. She has some Converse on, but she has like I don't know, she has the
spiked hair.
Yeah, the slicked back hair, and which she always kind of does have the slicked back hair, but I don't know. She has the like black leather jacket type thing. It just looked funny.
Because it was.
And Nathan is like, all right, Kenzie, when we go in there, I'm going to do the talking. I know you have kind of a bad temper. I know you, and we just don't want to have any of this get out of hand. We need to be completely polite and just get through this.
So Nathan is polite and it gets them nowhere. And then at the end, Kenzie just blows up at Chamsia and it actually gets them what they want, which is a couple of minutes with James. She like yells at Chamsia, like, how can you consider yourself fair and not let us talk to him? Very passionate speech by Kenzie. She just wants to not die, really. Chamsia has said something along the lines of implying that if they keep poking into this, they're going to end up on the chopping block too.
We actually skipped a scene, and I want to go back to it because it was actually pretty humorous. So there's a scene where I believe it's Davis, David, and Nathan sitting down to eat, and Box is there, and they're discussing the facts of the case, and they're trying to figure out how it possibly could have been that that Bannerman could have stolen the embryos when he was playing at his concert, and Davis is like, well, maybe he has a clone, and that's actually how Nathan got the idea.
Well, Davis is the one giving everybody the ideas because David's been trying to track the guy who actually has the embryos, and he can't because he's assuming that the guy's been bouncing his signal off of satellites on the Earth. Davis is talking about the irregular hours on the moon base, and Alex sits down and is like, these irregular hours, man, they're killing us. And then that's when David gets the idea. He's like, oh yeah, the irregular hours. Like all the ransom messages go through when the moon can communicate with the Earth through these satellites.
Right, so that's how they find out he's operating off of like a bunker on the moon.
Yeah. So Nathan actually sends Davis and... Yeah, so what happens is Nathan and Kenzie speak with James. They're like, do you know anything? And he's like, no, I don't know anything. And then Nathan and Kenzie communicate with Moonbase, find out about this thing. Nathan sends Davis, or David sends Davis, actually, I think.
And Anna.
And Anna to go. And says something like, if anything happens to her, I'll kick your ass. But if anything happens to you, I'll kick her ass too.
Yeah, that was my one quote for this episode. I really liked that. So at least, David is putting them on equal ground and letting Anna have a chance to prove herself. Or another chance to prove herself, I guess.
Well, we find out that Anna was like the worst person to send on this mission because as they're driving over, she's like, as a Buddhist, I believe in protecting all life, which means I've never used a gun and don't know how to, and like don't think I'd be able to kill this guy. And Davis is like, wait, what? What? They're like already halfway to the mine at that point, and Davis is like, no. So Davis is like, you stay here. But if anybody except me comes out of that mine, you shoot him, Anna. It's you or them.
Right. And I actually like how he says that line. He's about to leave, and he kind of, I think, turns back to Anna, and he's like, if it comes to that, it's either going to be you or him. And I think he says, like, I would much rather it be you or something.
Well, Davis immediately gets captured.
Yeah.
As is classic. Yeah.
So this was actually really funny. There's, I guess, a ladder that you need to go down to get into the room. Mm-hmm. And Davis is just climbing down as slowly as humanly possible. Like, he's doing it so slow. So slow. And it's like, I was like, come on, Davis. Like, lives are at risk. And you're just like, all right, let me just get down. Make sure my footing is stable. I don't know. But it turns out Albie, the clone, was just hiding like behind the ladder, and he just like tases Davis or something.
He disconnects his air tube and connects it to some random like knockout gas. Anyway, then Albie calls Chamsia, reveals his face, is like, yeah, James isn't the guy you want. I'm the guy you want. You can do whatever you want to James, basically. And Chamsia threatens to like cut his hand off. And Albie's like, I don't care. I literally have no idea who this guy is. And James is like begging for the guy to like turn himself in, and he's like, why? So you can go back to be playing piano? No. And then Nathan's like, don't worry, we have men on the inside. And then Albie's like, yeah, I've got a hostage here. But then Anna, true Japanese hero, comes down she's Japanese.
Yeah.
She comes down the ladder and holds a gun to Albie, and he's like, you won't be able to kill me. You've never killed anyone.
This is like the one instance in like TV and movies where the villain is like, you're not going to be able to shoot that gun. And she's just like, watch me. And she pulls the trigger.
And he just keels over and dies. And she's like shocked that she was able to do that. And Divas is like, Anna, you got to pick up the phone and call them back. Anna, you got to save them. But then Anna's like shell-shocked about this whole thing. She's probably going to have some lasting trauma about that, or not. I guess we'll find out next week.
Next week, we finally find out how episodic Star Cops really is. No, it's not as episodic as I thought it was going to be.
Yeah,
actually.
We stopped finding out things about David as soon as like Divas and Anna were introduced.
Yeah, David was so interesting those first like 3 episodes, and now look where we are.
Now look where we are.
But Anna basically saved the day, and I really like that.
No, I do too. It kind of redeems her after she gets bashed on the head and lets the villain get away in the first 10 minutes of the episode.
Right.
So it's a nice full circle kind of thing that she gets to come back and save the day at the end.
And this is kind of her full inauguration into the Star Cops as well.
Nice, she can kill people now.
And she put Divas in his place too, because he was acting sort of stuck up as well.
Yeah, but that's just Divas.
Well, he was coming at it from a place of like, look, I'm like, I've been on the force for like a lot longer, and I've been part of other police agencies, and she is a rookie, but like, everyone has to start somewhere, so,
right.
And then we get the glorious final scene.
Well, no, actually, so Divas has a touching moment with Anna in the lunar rover, and then we get this kind of random intercut scene with James just playing piano for like a minute, just to show that I guess he's okay, I guess.
Well, he had a concert coming up, and that's why he was like so mad at the Roo, because he was under house arrest and his concert was coming up. But so I guess this is
they canceled one of the nights of the concert because he was under house arrest, and that's when he says the line about no 2 performances are ever equal,
right?
Because they get a replacement. And David says something like, nobody's irreplaceable. He counters with the no 2 performances are equal.
Right.
But during this piano playing, we cut to the Concorde flying to the moon. And Kenzie's talking to Nathan. She's like, this whole clone thing should give us some food for thought. Like, what could it mean about us? There could be more copies of us running around. Like, maybe we need to, it basically undermines what we find to be like the most foolproof method of identification, which is our face. So maybe we should figure this out. And Nathan like doesn't respond, and she's like, Nathan? And then she like turns to her other side, and Nathan's actually sitting on her other side, and the guy across the aisle is just a guy who looks like Nathan, I guess. I don't know. Maybe Nathan has a clone. I don't know. And then it just ends.
Yep.
Really didn't think they were going for these Blake Seven like sitcom endings, and yet here we are.
Well, they weren't at first, and now they are. It was ever actually they started going for the more sitcom-y or humorous endings once Chris Boucher stopped writing, actually.
Didn't Chris Boucher write most of the sitcom-y endings to Blake 7, though? Now that I think about it.
I don't think so. He didn't write most of the episodes of Blake 7.
That's true, I guess.
Although, to what capacity he edited a lot of episodes depends, I guess, on the season or the episode itself.
Right.
Maybe he was the one injecting the sitcom-y endings into like Terry Nation's scripts.
Chris.
But yeah, that's how it ends.
Yeah, I really liked this episode.
Yeah, I really liked this one. I think it's just the best one. I think a lot of that comes down to like the dynamic between the characters. I don't know. I just really like our 5 main characters.
Yeah, I think it was also paced very well and had a really interesting crime. It wasn't like shady corporation does shady thing for the 5th week in a row, right?
No, definitely. And actually, like halfway through the episode, all the players and who committed the crime.
Right.
So, and despite that, it remains interesting for the entire episode. So I thought that was pretty well done.
Because you're still trying to hunt down where the killer is, and you're still trying to stop him.
Right.
That's like if you know who the killer is, keeping it good after that point is a challenge, but can be done.
As this episode shows.
Yeah, and I also like the interplay between all the characters. Going to be interesting to see how that develops again next week.
Right.
Now that Divas and Anna seem to be on friendly grounds.
Well, as friendly ground as Divas seems to be with anyone, since he seems to like wisecracking at everyone.
Right. And yeah. I mean, I don't actually have a lot to talk about in that aspect. I liked it a lot. I think it also, like episode 2, which I liked because a lot of things came together really well. This one did that as well. There are a lot of separate, almost disparate plot threads that get joined very well over the course of this episode.
Yeah.
And they're done in a very good way, I think. I think this is John Collee's better effort after last week. Curious to see if he can keep it up for next week.
Yeah, I would agree. The Interact Zone site actually makes mention, or the guy writing it talks about how he, as a kid, really liked the episode, and now when revisiting it, calls it one of the weakest episodes of Star Cops. Interestingly.
Interesting. Maybe because the villain is basically revealed halfway through the episode and not near the end. I think pretty much every other episode we've had, maybe the villain's been introduced in the episode before the end, but you don't know they committed the crime till the very end.
Well, the thing with all the other episodes is that, revealing the circumstances of the murder or, how it was carried out is a part of catching the criminal, and it's also revealed at the very, just knowing that is the big thing for the episode. And then in this episode, that's not the case, really, with this one.
Right, because in this episode, the kind of main thrust is you already know how the crime was committed because you're shown how it's committed at the beginning of the episode. That you kind of, it's like a race against time kind of thing.
Right, and there are all these different players. You have the Star Cops, and you have the criminal, and then you have Shamsia Asadi and her group.
Yeah, I mean it's very different from the rest of the episodes, but I think by necessity it has to be, right? I feel like you can't do the same formula every week, and I know I talked about this early in the podcast that a police procedural lives or dies on how interesting your crimes are. And doing the same thing over and over again, boring. And that's why, as soon as this episode started and the crime was completely different, I was like, breath of fresh air. No, but seriously, though.
Sure.
Because, I've been complaining on this show, at least, about how every episode seems to do the shady corporation does a shady thing, covers it up, and the Star Cops uncover it, and they hate the Star Cops. We do get mentioned in this episode how the Star Cops have no jurisdiction on Earth because I guess Earth just hates them. So,
yeah, there are also some pretty weighty, fueled comments about how, Kenzie's I think Nathan's better be careful, they might just shoot us, and Kenzie's isn't that against the law? And Nathan just said something along the lines of wouldn't be surprised if that was the law here, and it's
yikes. Also, when they're when Alex is talking about how James will be totally fine if they just tell Shamsia if they just release the name of the criminal or whatever, being James, and Nathan says well, he won't be alive very much longer if you hand him over to the Arabs, basically. That's right. A paraphrasing, but that's the thrust of the conversation.
Yeah.
So, yikes. Yikes. Yeah, so I think I actually talked about pretty much what I wanted to.
Yeah, I didn't have anything beyond that.
We usually do the movie segment next, right? Well, there's no movie quotes that I noticed in this episode.
I didn't notice any either. Watch all the episodes where there's no movie quotes in this, just be full of very obscure ones that Voucher threw in there or something.
That would be kind of legendary, actually. We should interview the man, the myth himself, Chris. We should see if we could find him.
Is Chris?
He is still alive, right? Isn't he?
I think so. I think he is.
How recent were the Caldor City audios? Because he wrote those.
I don't know. I have no idea, actually. I know there's an NBA player named Chris Boucher. So every time I Google Chris Boucher, he comes up.
Yeah, I don't actually know if Chris Boucher's alive or not, now that I think about it. Terry Nation's not.
No, he's not.
Britain's 10 actors. But, how many of Britain's 10 actors appeared in this? So I went on IMDb and they only listed 2 names other than the main cast this time. Normally they list like every extra possible, but for this episode it was like just 2 names, and it was, let's see here, Nitsa Shaw, who played Chamsia Asadi, and then Brian Guaspari, who played James Bannerman and Albie.
Right.
So Nitsa Shaw's been in EastEnders, a bunch of stuff I didn't recognize, and then she played Karina in Warriors of the Deep.
Wow. How about that?
So how
Warriors
about that?
of the Deep, so like 20 years before this, basically.
Yes. Well, no. Warriors of the Deep was the 5th Doctor.
Yeah.
Was the third. Warriors of the Deep was the 5th Doctor's one, wasn't it? Wasn't the 3rd Doctor one this?
Yeah. So like 5 years before this.
Yeah.
Well, how about that?
I don't know why that's so surprising to you. And then we have Brian Guaspari. I'm probably butchering that. It's Gwaspari. He was in Remington Steele, EastEnders, Poirot. He played like an uncredited role in The Spy Who Loved Me. He's also in the modern show Doctors and Midsummer Murders. So he's got quite a prolific little background there.
Huh.
And that was the only 2 names listed on IMDb for this episode, besides like David Calder and all them.
Yeah, I didn't have any more than that, so that's all we got.
Because again, those are the only 2.
Well, normally I would watch the credits and see if they had any more. But I'm guessing if IMDb doesn't have the other like extras or anything.
Yeah, because clearly somebody has gone through and like meticulously added names to the Star Cops IMDb pages, because the ones before this were like extensive.
Right. And I don't know where else they would be getting those other than like the episode credits.
Right.
But yeah, quotes. I just had the one we mentioned before where Theroux says, if anything happens to her, I'm going to kick your ass. And if anything happens to you, I'm going to kick hers.
Well, I have... this is an exchange between Alex and Nathan. Also, that's a good one. I really liked it. But this exchange between Alex and Nathan, where Alex says something like, back in my day, diplomacy was a simpler affair. And Nathan says, coming from a Russian, that's very rich.
Wow. Nathan is showing another side of himself this episode with all these off-the-cuff comments.
Off-color comments. Off-white comments.
Flashback on Doctor Who to that time Ace was like just casually racist in Battlefield.
I don't even remember what she said.
She called her...
oh, right!
Yeah, she called her friend a particular name.
Oh, yeah!
Yeah.
Oh, yeah!
That was a thing. That actually aired... Was that 87? It must have been. Yeah.
Weird. Weird. Well... I'm actually out of things to talk about.
Same here.
So on that note, if you'd like to reach out to us and email us before this show comes to an end, because we're rapidly approaching the end of the show already, you can reach us at thedoctor@decorativevegetable.com. Questions, comments, concerns, angry rants, love letters, your thoughts on a double life. You can find us on YouTube at Decorative Vegetable. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify, all at Inevitable, a classic sci-fi podcast. Be sure to leave a rating if you like the show.
Check us out on Facebook, Trust Your Doctor. Like us on Facebook. Also check us out on Twitter at TYD Podcast, and follow us on Twitter. And next time we'll be watching Other People's Secrets. But until then, the end.